how it relates to the Power Platform. Kurt, do you think data is important while building apps?
Yes.
Well, that's a short answer. Well, let's tell everybody what they're going to learn about today. Okay, so I've got a little outline, and this outline can adjust. But uh, at the forefront, I want to let everybody know what's on the agenda today to be covered. Okay, try to be as organized as possible here, as much as we can be. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about database fundamentals. Okay, so this is meant for the absolute beginner. You know nothing about databases. In fact, you may not know how to spell ERD or data.
It's a big word, ERD.
I love your reactions, Kurt. So database fundamentals. What is data? Why is it important? We'll give like an introduction to what a database is, what a database table is, what a relationship, fields, columns. We'll go over all that. Explain data models and their importance. We can talk about the difference between structured and unstructured data. Okay. Basic data types and formats. We'll also talk about understanding relational data. Okay, so we might touch a little bit on what database normalization is. Okay, what are the different levels of normalization? Now you might, well, what is he talking about? Well, you're in the right spot because we're going to talk about it. Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about what SQL is. Now, SQL is a weird topic. SQL. Kurt, it's funny over the years, when I got my first job working with you, you used to talk about SQL. You would never say SQL. And sometimes you'd call it squeal. I don't want you to talk when we get to that topic. I want you to tell the whole story because it's really funny. So we'll talk about the Power Platform and data, relational data and Power Apps, and at the end we're going to have some Q&A. So that's what's on the agenda today. That's what you guys can expect. So what do you think about that, Kurt?
Do
we have enough to talk about?
That is an absolute full plate. I can't wait to get in it. This is actually my favorite thing to talk about. I love data. I know that Elvis is king. I know that Elvis is king, but some people think data's king. So, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm hoping to see data is king here on this live stream. So just a few. One thing I wanted to say was, Kurt, you look great. I just don't hear you very well. I don't know if maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe if your web camera mic is, or
I don't know. I might have to check it out. You're not hearing me at all, very well at all, huh?
It sounds like you can hear me really well right now, right?
Right. How about now?
So you do the same thing. Sounds exactly the same. So I think maybe your web camera mic is doing that.
Okay. Well,
so if you hit that sprocket at the bottom, you can change your mic there. But we'll just keep trucking here. Okay. So just FYI, so I do see some of my accelerator students on here. Just FYI, if you want to come on and you have got questions or comments, and you're showing your video, I'm going to take that as a cue as you got questions or comments. So I'll add you on if you guys are showing your video. If you hide your video, then I'll hide you. Okay. And if you don't want your real name to be displayed there, just click on settings and change maybe just to your first name or whatever you want to be known as to the world. And anyhow, so let's get the introduction out of the way here. So Kurt, if you were going to give the lowdown on databases, what would you say? Go.
First of all, you're not going to be able to write. Can you hear me better now?
You sound great.
Okay, good. So I look great. Sound great. So that's data right there, by the way. That's data. That's information. There's nothing you can do in this world without information, and there's not very much of a program that you're going to be able to write without data. Just real quick. Now, how long do I got here? Because this is an introduction. You want me to just go short?
Yeah, the beginning part of this video, I want it to be a really good introduction. And if you got any stories, your stories are amazing, Kurt.
Okay.
So I've heard, guys, people pay big money for this. I'm telling you, you might think, oh gosh, I'm going to fast forward this video. No, listen to what Kurt has to say. He's the granddaddy of. It was I don't know. I put him on a pedestal, man, when I was learning, and everything that you said, man, I just soaked up.
You did.
Go
You
ahead.
did. Yeah. So, okay. So, I guess the story in my life was that I was for some reason, and I'm not that smart, fellas. I'm just not that smart. So this had to be God. Okay. I am living proof that God exists because I'm just not that smart. And for some reason, I chose, okay, back in the old days, and Nick might be able to relate to this, and probably all you guys can. You guys, when I started thinking about what am I going to do with my life professionally, and back in the day, there was 3 types of business applications. You had word processing, you had your spreadsheet type for your calculations, for your accounting nerds, the guys with the green pocket, the visors and the pocket protectors, and they had the spreadsheet, and then they had databases. So you had WordPerfect back in them days, Lotus 1, 2, 3 back in them days, and DBase 3 back in those days, and other things, Superbase and all those, right? So for some reason, I thought, you know what? Out of all those types of business applications, I need to learn one thing like the back of my hand. I need to learn it like there's no tomorrow learning it, because that's going to be my life from now on. And I chose data because I thought about hospitals, I thought about schools, I thought about businesses. They all need data. They've got to have it to be able to operate in. So you guys are in the right place when it comes to this kind of a thing, because it's all about, Power Apps is all about organizing data. It's all about building front end interfaces to reach the back end data. So you guys are in a place right now where you guys have already made that choice. You guys, for whatever reason, you guys were smarter than me, or at least as smart as me, because you guys thought, you know what, maybe data is king, and maybe something I've got to learn this data. So I really want to, if I can't push anything into your guys' minds more than this, is that know data like the back of your hands. You might want to learn Power Apps. You might want to learn Excel. You might want to learn to go out there and learn Java or whatever, but learn data and operate with data. Learn that thing like there's just no tomorrow. Frontwards, backwards, sideways. I guess that's my story. Oh, and SQL. I just got a trivia question for you guys. Do any of you guys know how far back SQL or Squeal or SQL goes?
92.
Nope. Nick, how far does it go, Nick? Turn Nick on over there.
All right.
I bet you he knows.
Cod and Dobie or somebody. I remember two guys, Cod and somebody else who wrote.
Yeah, it was they were actually created the 4th form of the normalization, right? Boyce Cod, right?
Yes.
This was the 60s. SQL has been around since the 60s, because back in those days, the only way you could communicate was through teletype. And you could actually use text to move data around with these select statements that you guys will see in this SQL. And it turns out that SQL is probably the best way to be general, like you could go across platforms, every platform, using that same text stuff. So data goes back, this SQL and this data concepts, this normalization goes way back since the 60s. And all we've been doing is just perfecting it and making it faster and putting different engines behind it. And this is, I guess I just want to say this one more thing. And that is that this is proof that, technology changes, maybe patterns change, maybe ways of programming changes, but programming never changes. The concepts of programming never changes. C# is no different than C when it comes down to, when you break it down into the good fundamentals. And Power Apps, we're going to make the same patterns and fundamentals as you would if you were working in Java or anything like that. So it never changes. So learn these concepts, because this is all foundation. There you have it.
Absolutely. So what I would sort of paraphrase everything that Kurt just said. If you want to be timeless in your profession, in your career, be an expert on data.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you guys a story that was a huge influence in my career. Okay. So when I was a young pup back in my 20s, I come in to my first job that Kurt helped me get. And I'm like, oh, so when are we going to write some games? Like, game development is where it's at. And I remember, Kurt, you told me two things. Number one, you said that, well, there's a lot more work out there for databases. And number two, games are nothing but data. You remember saying that?
Yep.
And one thing that I remember you going into, it's like, well, with any game, you've got, let's say, a count, or you've got like how many, let's say Pac-Man, you know? Well, maybe not everybody knows what Pac-Man is.
That was Jeff's favorite game. That was Jeff's favorite game.
I'm trying to think. Well, any game. Think of any game. You know, maybe you've got like 3 lives, and then the game's over. Okay, well that's going to be a variable, right? What about the top score? Boom, that's a database. That needs to, any data that needs to be persisted.
What's that word?
I'm going to bring on Jeff to make sure I'm using the right word here. Persisted or persistent. We got data that needs to be persistent throughout. You need to store that in some type of a database, you know? And then, so give me some more examples, Kurt. I'm drawing blanks here.
Like for games?
Games or any type of apps. I mean, any type of apps, you've got
Right.
data. Data is everywhere.
Right. I mean, you can't play tic-tac-toe without some kind of data. I mean, you could do it. You could do it for one game, but then you would have to change all of your code again to do it for another game. Right. So if you want to make something, you're going to hear a concept a lot of times called data driven. Well, my program is 100% data driven.
Yeah.
Most programs are data driven because you think about it, everything like World of Warcraft. You guys been hearing about this World of Warcraft. Think about the data that goes on in that. You're talking about the types of clothes that these characters are. I got these characters as people. Isn't that crazy? So these characters have to wear a certain type of clothing, or the weapons that they have, or even the world that they're living in, the colors of the world that they're living in. Is it day or night? That's all data. Everything. You look at the weather, that's all data. You look at hospital settings where people, you know, when we're talking about MRIs and tracking information and statistics and it's all data. You know, you can't do much of anything without it. It's in our lives everywhere. So it's really cool. We have data lakes and data oceans now. You know, I mean, we don't have databases anymore. We have data lakes and data oceans now. It's just amazing. I don't know if that's where you were wanting to go, but that's where
well, what's hilarious, Kurt, is this term data lake, this concept of data lake has become popular, and I've started to see it in the last year or two. I'm not going to talk about data lakes, but that's actually a thing. I don't know if that's where what you were thinking about with that, but absolutely, you got data lakes, data oceans. So something that I want you guys to take away from this video is if you become a master of data, you're going to become timeless. Okay.
Yeah. God, I love that. I love that saying right there. That's perfect. I wish I would have come up with that one. That's good stuff, man.
Sometimes people will say, "Oh, you know, is Power Apps, you know, is that really a viable platform? Whatever." You know, it doesn't matter if you master these concepts that we're teaching you in Power Apps, but also in data, you're timeless. You know, you can take what you've. I take what Kurt, you taught me with VB6, what I've learned from .NET, and I apply it all to what I'm working on. All my years of experience. So you guys see, sometimes on these videos, I build an app, you know, from scratch, and I'm throwing this. I know how to design it. Well, I'm just pulling from all that experience. I'm trying to impart it to you guys. But data is really fundamental. That's something that Kurt taught me from the get-go. Okay, so you guys understand data is really important. It makes you timeless. Number 3, if all else fails, you could apply to be a DBA, database administrator somewhere, if you understand data really well. You know, there might be a few more things that you need to learn, like how to do backups and restores and a few other type of admin things. But man, a DBA needs to know data really well. If you either plan on becoming a Power BI expert or you want to do Power Apps, data. You know, you want to work in Power Automate, you want to data. And
if I could just add something to what you just said there, you can always, it's when, if you know the data concepts, it's real easy. The learning curve of any tool that's being used. And I guess I'm kind of living proof to this because I really never worked with SQL Server very often, but I worked with a lot of other platforms. And I remember one time Darren was touring me through SQL Server. He was giving me the 5-minute tour. And I mean, it was like, I could understand everything he was throwing at me. And I really feel like, you know, within about an hour or two, I could probably handle SQL Server at a decent level, you know, and that's because I know the data, I know the fundamentals of the data. So I understand that all these applications, they might have different teeth on them, but they're going to do the same. They're going to be doing the same basic things. What are we doing? What are those 3 concepts that we do, Darren, with data? Those 3 things that we do with data. What do we do?
I'm thinking of 4.
We read records, right? Read a record.
That's the R in CRUD.
Yeah.
We insert.
We process a record.
Oh, process a record. Okay, so that could be adding or editing. Okay.
We could be editing it, adding it.
Yeah.
And then we've got to be able to write a record. And then, of course, you've got your CRUD in between all that where you have, what are those things, Darren? What is CRUD?
So CRUD is an acronym, 4 letters, CRUD. C is for create, or you insert. R is the next, which is read. Okay.
Read. Yeah.
And then now these aren't really in a really good order. I'm thinking read a record is probably the first thing that most of the time that you want to do, right?
Yep.
But the third is U for update, and D is for delete. Those are the 4 main things that you would do with a record, right?
Yep. So all these fancy platforms that they have, SQL Server, you have Sybase, you have Oracle, you've heard of all those big household names. You've heard of DBase, you've heard of Access. They all do the same thing. Every one of those. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So you guys understand data is important. All right. So, Kurt, what is relational data? So we've talked about data. What is relational data?
Well, okay. So it's kind of hard to go into that concept very deep without first going into some normalization, which I really want to talk about that normalization a little bit. Okay. You guys are going to hear this word and it sounds like a really crazy, nerdy word, normalization, normalizing data, but really it's not that hard. It's just not. You've got 6, actually you have 5, but some people want to argue about it and say there's 6 different forms of normalization. But there's really only 3 that matter. The first 3 are all that really matter. And that's how you build a relational relational database. So the first form of normalization, that's where you know nothing can be repeated in your database table. So you have a table. Think about a 2-dimensional table. Think about an Excel spreadsheet with rows and columns, because that's what we're looking at here. You're looking at fields and records. That's what when you're talking about database language, it's fields and records. If you're in Excel or in a spreadsheet world, it's rows and columns. Okay. And so the 2 terms are interchangeable. Whatever you're comfortable with, fine. But so when you're creating your fields in your table, it's important that you're not going to have any repeating data within that. So if, for instance, let's say we have a customer database table, and now we're talking about you don't want to have records repeating themselves. So you wouldn't want to have my name, Kurt Larson, for everything. Let's say I lived in 2 different houses. I got 2 different properties. I got 2 different addresses. So I would have to have Kurt Larson with this address, and then I would have to have Kurt Larson with that address. Well, you wouldn't want those things in the same table. That's the first form of normalization, is make sure each record is dependent on that one thing. So Kurt Larson would be, at that point, without anything else, Kurt Larson would be the primary. That would be the primary. And then you would have, if I had addresses, well, if the person could have more than one address, well, then you might want to have to create another table for that. So you would have a name, a customer table, and an address table. So then that's your first form of normalization. Your second form of normalization is that first of all, it's got to be in the first form. But then the second thing is that you're got to have a key that's going to be the address table is going to have to be dependent on the customer table. Okay, that's the best way to put that into English, right? So your your dependent table has to depend on the primary table. So you got a key, which at this point would be my name, but that's not a very good key, is it? Because there could be more than one Kurt Larson, right? Right. So what we probably have to do is have some kind of an identification number that would keep me. A lot of places have your name plus your birth date, the last four of your social security number. They do. You'll hear that all the time. If you're ever trying to deal with insurance or medical stuff, they'll say, "What's your birth date?" Your name, birth date, and last four of your social security number. Or if you're dealing with credit cards, what's your last four of your credit card number? Those are keys that they're going to be typing in to get to the right person, because there could be more than one person that's got his name's Kurt Larson, right? So you got to have a primary key, and that's what that is. So then that primary key is going to get copied over to every other table that you're going to be using that's going to relate to that first table.
Hey, Kurt, yep. Something I'd like to do is everything that you're sharing is gold. I just want to, I'm thinking of, I want to keep it more like for really beginner level. I just want to go slower. I like everything that you're saying. I just want to do it slower. And I want to show an example. So this is the ticketing system. So, so let's rewind a little bit. Let's talk about these concepts. You talked about once in many relationships. So this is a application. You guys are probably familiar with my ticketing system. I have here on the YouTube channel where I designed it, and it's a separate course and everything. But a lot of my viewers are familiar with this project. Okay, so tickets that come in are placed in requests. This table right here. So you just said a primary key, right? So I'm going to zoom in on this. So I just want to show examples of while you're talking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Slow me down because I get to going too fast on things. It's not that complicated, but there's a lot to it, so it's a lot to take in at first. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing I wanted to say, at the onset of what relational data is and what it's not, is that Kurt, you taught me, you use this term flat file, a flat file. So if you got, and I always thought of a flat file as like a CSV or a comma separated value, or if you export an Excel spreadsheet, as a CSV or some other, it's a single file that's got all the data.
What's CSV stand for? What's CSV? What is that?
Comma separated value.
Yeah. They might not know. So yeah.
So that is different from relational data. So what we could do with this data here, you might create one file per database table. Or if you can imagine, if you don't understand data, guys, and you start creating your Power Apps app, you're probably going to try to put all this data into one database table. Exactly. And you'll have fields there for request images. And let's say you wanted to hold at least 3 images. Well, you might create a column here, request image 1, request image 2, request image 3. And then somebody says, well, I want to upload 5. So you create another column. Okay, request priorities. So you just have a column here that says request priorities. What about users? Well, we'll just put all the user data right in here in this. And you put everything in one table. Well, that would be a flat file or a flat type of database. That's the type of thing you want to get away from, right? So I want to show you I want to relate the difference between what relational data is as opposed to just like a flat file or just just one big SharePoint list or one big Excel spreadsheet, and what you brought up, Kurt, was database normalization is so key with relational data. And as we talk about this relational data, it'll become evident. It'll bring home everything that Kurt just said. I do have a document I'd like to share with you guys, and Kurt, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, Derek, I just kind of want to throw a one sentence thing out there too. Sure. Yeah. So when we talk about relational data, a lot of times people get hung up on that when you're beginning with data. It's like, what's the difference between a database and a relational database? All it means is that all the fields, all the forms, all the tables are related to each other, and they're related to a certain thing. And that's what Darren's going to be showing here. That's all it says. A related database just means you got it all broke down and they're all related. The database tables are all related.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to resize this thing so everybody can see this.
Yep.
So these are the database normalization rules here. So for you accelerator students, we're going to have a whole module on database normalization, just FYI. This is more like an overview. This might feel like you're drinking water from a fire hose, but we're sort of giving you the lowdown on this. And at the end, where you guys have questions, that's going to let Kurt and I know, okay, we need a follow-up lesson on one topic we didn't have time to cover, and it should be a whole thing. Somebody might ask a question, we could answer in 30 seconds. So here are all the there are database normalization, and I always taught the first 5, and some people told me, yeah, don't worry about anything after 5, but these, it's sort of like levels. You know how you got hurricane categories or tornado categories. You got different levels, okay, of normalization with your data. So let's read through this. Database normalization is a process used to reduce data redundancy. Data redundancy, I'm going to underline that. That's what you want to reduce, okay, and improve data integrity. Kurt, what would you say data integrity is? No, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, it just means that we call it clean data, and it just means that you can count on the data being correct.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Irregardless of the redundancy in it.
Don't make me bring Jeff on here. Okay, so first normal form, the first rule of designing your database tables. In 1NF, so whenever you see NF here in this document or on the screen here, we're talking about normal form. Each table cell should contain a single value. Okay, a single value. And each record needs to be unique. Okay, that means there are no repeating groups or arrays. Okay, so Kurt, give me an example where maybe that you've seen that maybe Power Apps creators sort of fall into this issue. Maybe they try to put all kinds of stuff in a one field.
Yeah.
Is anything without naming any names
well,
or anything, of course.
I've seen that in a couple of places.
Yeah.
I've seen that where people were trying to track regions based on a concatenated string, where they were actually trying to create a string that had to be broke down out of it. And from that, when you parse it down, that's where you separate and get your regions from. So they're ultimately putting 5 or 6 different values in one field, ultimately. And then you have to use that one field to determine it. I've also seen a corporation use a similar thing where they had a string, and based on that string, it depended on what kind of product they were dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way of trying to do something that's not normalized. I don't know if that's an example of what you're looking for, but
no, this is all really good stuff.
I actually thought the one I was talking about earlier, where you have 2 Kurt Larsons in a record, see in the end it says, and each record needs to be unique, mm-hmm. right? Each record needs to be unique. That's pretty important. I see that in a lot of places. Like if you had 2 addresses, you would just repeat the same person on the records. So now your database is just full of, you might only have 100 people in this database, but you might have 500 records because of all the redundant data that's in there, right? So,
absolutely. I'm gonna open this up and I'm the one who designed this database, but I'm very experienced in designing data. Let me think of an example here with our requests where we would have repeating stuff. Well, let me go down
priorities,
because it would be what I would say. What's that?
Your priorities could be repeated stuff, right? In request table.
Yeah.
Actually, I see what you did. Actually, what you did is everywhere where there could be repeated stuff, you put an ID there. I thought it's a slick little thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pretty much any relationship that I have here could have been repeating data. Okay. For example, requests, I could have had request notes. I could have created one big text area field in there Well, I was working with SharePoint. So this would be a multiple lines of text, I think. And what I could do is somebody left a note, I could just append the latest note into that field every time. Okay. Well, so these database normalization tools, guys, save you when you're developing an app. And let's say I could just append those notes. Somebody leaves notes, boom, I just put it at the end of that, And so all the notes are just like, there are 5 different notes. It's just boom, 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 boom. And maybe it's got their name beside it, maybe like some dashes to separate them. We could do that. Okay. But a few months down the road, your client, your customer, your stakeholders are like, hey, I only want to display the most recent comment of the person that it was assigned to. They start giving you some requirements. Changing requirements come in all the time, guys. So if you follow these database normalization rules, it's going to save you when requirements change. I'm keeping an eye on the comments here. Also keep an eye on the private chat for you Accelerator students. I'm not seeing anything yet, but yeah. So Dark Neffy says, I didn't know I was not good at Power BI until I had to crest my own database. Absolutely. And the same thing could be said for Power Apps. Writing your first application is, man, data is so important, guys. It's so important. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be an example of me violating first normal form is I put all the notes into one little field here and kept appending to it. Assignment.
Hey, there's also, Darren, there's another way of looking at that normal form. When we talk about normal form, when you're looking at your table, look at your table and you just ask yourself a question. You say, how can I make this slicker?
Would you look at it?
How can I make this slicker? Would you just look at that? Just look at it. How could you make that slicker? That's when you're saying, how can I break this down out of these normal forms? I just kind of I know that normal form sounds very formal and, theoretical and everything else, but really you're just breaking this thing down to you're trying to relate the data. You're trying to keep repeat stuff out of there and you're trying to make your database slicker. That's what you're trying to do. So
absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So that was first normal form. Just give you one more example. Let's say we've got request categories. I could create a category in there and let's say the requirements change that I want to assign multiple categories, almost like tags or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, if you had it broken out into a separate table, it would save you as you would need to create a many-to-many relationship. Okay. So we'll talk more about relationships here in a bit. So that's first.
Hey, Darren, real quick, just before could you go back to that just real quick? I just want to put something out there with that.
Sure, please.
So really what you're doing in this is when you're looking at this, you're asking yourself, when you're developing your application, you're looking at this data, you're asking yourself, okay, what can possibly change? Can any of these things change? Can they need more fields? Can they need more types of things? For instance, like categories. He's got this category ID up there. And I really kind of want to, if you look at that request table, he did a beautiful job of this by putting an ID. He looked at that and he said, well, is there any of these priorities? Can these priorities ever change? Yeah, they can maybe add some priorities later down the road. Oh, I better put a priority ID on here and make another table out there so that way I can have several priorities because you never know if they're going to add some. Same thing with categories. Maybe they add a category or they delete categories. We're not dealing with those categories anymore, so they're going to take them out. So guess what? He makes a category ID there and he breaks that out into categories so that way he knows that stuff might change down the road. So much being a good programmer is when you're looking at and designing it in the beginning is saying what is possibly going to change here. If some task in your program, like maybe categories or priorities or requesters, any of those things change, go out there and you break it away from the main table, relate it and create another little table for it.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the way your program is going to be designed to handle that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if that's too much for a beginner or not.
This is all good stuff, Kurt.
Yeah, hopefully you can remember that because this is a really good example of a relational database.
Absolutely. Very cool. All right, so that's first normal form. Second normal form. A table is in second normal form if it is in one normal form. Remember, I talked about like a category 5 hurricane definitely meets all the criteria for a category 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Right. Right.
So as you go deeper, the better your data is going to get. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you accelerator students, when you turn in a lab, when you turn in your project, Kurt's going to be looking like you did not reach third normal form. And there's going to be a big red ink on it.
Virtual red ink, virtual red ink, but it's going to be red. Yeah.
So it has to meet first normal form. Okay. So you see here, tables in third normal form if it reaches second normal form. And all non-key attributes are fully functional dependent on the primary key.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to underline that. So that's key.
So if you go back to your ERD, you can kind of see that example right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the request priorities, for instance, that table right there, that ID, it's got an ID on it.
Yeah.
It is going to be mapped over to the priority ID, and it is fully dependent on that. That's when it says it's fully dependent. In other words, you can't do anything with these request priorities without that ID. That's the fully dependent. Just wanted to make sure that you guys saw the visual of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Kurt. What happens, Kurt, if we had 5 different priorities out there? Let's say we have low, medium, high, and then we got urgent and important, and we have another one out there that said test, and then we've got 1,000 requests out here, and they're all using different priorities, even that test one. And we're like, oh, I don't want test, and I don't want urgent, important, and I just want 3, and I delete 2 of those. What does that do to your referential integrity or your data integrity?
You now have what we called orphaned data. You have orphaned data. You have data that's hanging out there. It's like NASA launched a bunch of astronauts out there in space and then lost them, and they're just floating around out there in space, and they're going to die out there. That's what you have with this. You have orphaned data. There's no parent. Yeah. There's no dependent. It's dependent, and it doesn't have it anymore.
So, for example, you got a priority 1, 2, 3, and you've deleted 4 and 5. Okay, but you have a request record out here that has 4 in the category ID, and you go look it up, and then your application bombs. You get a big error, or you got a bug. I got a question for you, Kurt. What is a partial dependency?
Okay, let me see. How can I? So I'm trying to think of a good example. Let me get back with that one there. I got to think a little bit about that.
Yeah, we can circle back on that.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
Trying to think of good partial dependency.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just here.
So I guess, just real quick, I guess in the short answer of that would be like if you had a group that you could actually do a search and find a group of things, but you couldn't find the exact one.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an example of a partial dependency.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a group of fish out here, but I don't know exactly what that species of fish it is. That's because I don't have that specific ID for that. I've got a fish ID,
mm-hmm.
but I don't have the species of fish. I don't know what type of fish that is.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good question. I never really thought about having to try to explain that one.
Yeah.
Because I don't really deal with too many partial dependence. I guess I do. I just don't think about it when I'm doing it. Right. So.
Yeah. These are great questions. This is, so guys, for you accelerator students, we're going to be circling around and creating much more formal, methodical, organized modules based on, so we're just sort of like doing a mind dump here with you guys out of our, Kurt, I would say maybe our combined experience, we're working with like a half of a century here. Maybe, are we old or what?
Yeah.
Maybe 50 years of database experience here. And we're just trying to like do a mind meld with you guys. And we're just sort of talking off the top of our heads here, but still trying to keep this structured.
Yeah.
But these are great questions.
I enjoy talking about data and stuff, and I want to talk about it at a level that beginners can understand it. I want to just make this thing not so hard for people, because it's just not that hard. It really isn't. And sometimes I know I probably, when I get to talking, I make it way more complicated, because I can certainly complicate a ham sandwich. But what you got there? Partial dependency occurs in a database when a non-key attribute is dependent on a part or subset of the primary key. There you go. Yeah. So my fish example was pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Pretty spot on most of the time, Kurt.
Well, I'll tell you what. I was pulling a rabbit out of my hat on that one.
All right. Third normal form. A table is in third normal form if it is in second normal form and there are no transitive dependencies. You ready for this question, Kurt? This means that non-key attributes must depend only on the primary key. What are transitive dependencies?
So transitive means what? What's it mean to be transitive?
It means like it's moving, right?
Yeah. Things can change. Things can be moving in and out.
Transportation, transmorph. Yeah, so it's
so these are things that can change.
Mm-hmm.
Things that can no things that can change. No transitive dependencies. No dependencies that can change. That's what they're trying to say in that.
Yeah. So a perfect example of this is when this request table has a request priority here, right here on the
Yep.
priority ID. And then
Yep.
we go off and you're like, oh, I don't like ID of 1. I'm going to change that to 1001. Well,
Yep.
you can't do that because you have cross references based on that ID that was given originally. You can't be changing IDs, right?
Not very easily.
Or you have to create some type of if you're in SQL Server, you can create a trigger. So if something is if something changes one tab, you can have a trigger in SQL Server that will go and change it so there's no orphan records. So just keeping an eye on all the chats here. All right, so is there a relationship between these database normalization process and how easy can it be to construct validations on your Power App and database?
Relationship between these database normalization process and how easy it can be. Okay, so the relationship in this database normalization process is itself a relationship. Okay, you can't have one without the other, right? I think that's the way if I'm answering that question correctly.
Yeah.
And how easy can it be to conduct validations on your Power App and database? Yes.
You absolutely should. A good database system will have validation features built into it. That's why SQL Server is great.
But never count on it.
I agree.
As a programmer, you must be in control. Look, that's the number one thing. Remember, we talked about this last week. It's a game called Beat the Beast. And you got all these electronics all harnessed into the power to try to do one task and get that one task done correctly, right? You have total control of the beast, right? You don't have control over anything else in this world. Believe me, I know that. But you do have control over that. So control what you can. You control the beast, and you make sure that data is going to be good. Don't count on some third party or second party platform like SQL Server to do the validation for you, because it might fail and then your program is dead. So you make sure that your data is good before SQL Server ever sees it. Yep. It doesn't need to be doing that work. You have control over that thing, man. And I guess I just want to say, don't ever luck into this. Don't ever luck into it. And data validation is a very big topic. You cannot be a good programmer unless you know how to validate data very well. And so we're going to be teaching that. Darren and I are going to be teaching data validation left ways, right ways, up and down. You guys are going to be so sick about data validation. And Power Apps, sometimes it can be very easy. Data validation can be as hard as you want to make it. because if the more detailed you get in your validation to make sure that your data is right, the more complicated it's going to get. So, but it all starts easy, making sure that your name's right, make sure that your data's, like you got numbers where numbers are supposed to be and letters where letters are supposed to be. That's validation. But then you can get into some really complicated stuff too. So that's why I answered. I said yes. How easy it can be to conduct validations on your Power App and database. It can be real easy, but it can also be very hard. And you guys are going to learn how to do that. With especially the accelerator students, you guys are going to be learning how to do data validation, man.
Yeah,
we can't talk enough about it.
Absolutely. So it's the hardest with SharePoint, and it's the easiest with something like SQL Server, and
Sure.
Dataverse is fairly good as well, which is also a SQL Server database underneath the scenes. A lot of people don't know that. So I don't want to get too far in the weeds on the whole database normalization form. To be honest, we could probably have a lesson on each of these normal forms. And as we start getting higher and higher in the normal form, the more complex and more involved it is. But at the get-go, I want you guys to at least become familiar with the first three normal forms.
That's all that matters. That's Darren. That's perfect, because that's really all that's important in here. We can argue about 5 and 6 and all that, but really it's the first three forms of normalization of what you're going to use every day. You might get into some rocket science with the 4th and 5th ones, but what you see right there with Darren's ERD that he's got, that is what you're going to be seeing 99.9% of the time.
Yeah.
And then if you run into that, go read a book. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to open it up to the accelerator students. Guys, if you are showing your video, then I am going to bring you on, okay? So
I definitely want to hear what Jeff's got to say about all this.
Well,
Are you following us,
irregardless.
Jeff, so far? Irregardless about.
Yeah, I'm a little lost on the framework of it, but I'm just trying to just hang in there and listen to what's going on.
Okay, well, if you can come up with a good question, let us know so that maybe we can help you. Like maybe you can find the crux of what you're stuck on,
Okay.
and then maybe we can try to explain through that a little bit.
Yep.
I see we got Lou here.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you doing, Lou?
Hi, Lou.
Hey. Yep, I'm here. This is like my third time going through the app with the data. So you've seen my SQL. You've seen my my whole platform and everything. It's pretty complicated. So, but I think I've got a handle on it, but I still want y'all to look at it and critique it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
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 And Lou, by the way, I know that you had asked me a question in the school environment. I have been busy taking care of all this other biz. I haven't had a chance to post anything in school, so I'm sorry. I read your message, but I'm sorry I didn't get to reply to it.
It was a simple question. I just wanted a clarification
It
if I
was.
could change the table names and it not mess up like it does in SharePoint.
Maybe you can.
So something I think that would be really good is, Jeff, if you give us an example of, do you have an idea for an app in mind? Because I'm asking you specifically because I know you're more on the basic level of app development, or at least Power Apps, right?
Yeah. So recently I started a lawn mowing service on the side as a side business, and I wanted to create an app for that to track a few different things.
I love it.
Yeah.
That is I'm so happy you said it, because it just made me think of something.
Awesome.
So may I suggest that what you need to build is a CRM, or Kurt, what does CRM stand for?
Was that customer related model, relationship model?
Management. Yeah.
Management. There it is.
Yeah, you got CRMs, ERPs. There's all kinds of little acronyms for different types of applications that you might want to build. So I'm imagining that you want to keep. So I'm going to give you an example, guys. I had somebody come by and detail my car one time, and he was out there cleaning the car. I really liked his passion for what he was doing. And I just asked him, like, hey, how do you keep track of all your customers? I'm always thinking about data, and he's like, oh, he just lifted up his phone. I'm like, I keep track of all my, I'm like, oh, in your contacts? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, how do you keep that separate? I mean, you probably have hundreds of customers that you've serviced, maybe thousands, and those are all contacts, and you're like your Android or your Apple. He's like, yeah, I put little lightning emojis beside my. I'm like, oh my goodness, Kurt, does that violate any of the normal form rules?
It might. It might.
And I said, hey, I'm like, I'll write you an app, and if you want to work out a deal here, I'll write an app that will keep track of all your customers, all of your jobs coming up, all of pretty much everything that managed his whole business. And I said, and if you want to come by once a month and clean my cars, I'm like, I'm happy. And this was where I was starting to cranking out apps, and I had him export all of his contacts, and I pulled it into Excel, and I used Power Apps to like sift through and get those little lightning bolt emojis and insert it into a different table, and then get rid of and there was all kinds of ugly data. And so I created a little CRM system out of that. So Jeff, what I'm thinking is that you need a CRM, and I was Kurt, tell a story while I'm finding this app really quick that I want to demo. You have a story?
Well, sure.
Or we can have
Yeah,
talk about her project, or just give me like maybe 30 or 60 seconds here. I don't want dead air,
Lou, did you want to talk about your project a little bit, or?
I mean, mine's just a basic customer relations. It's a CRM that I'm keeping up with our customers.
That's not basic.
Oh yeah,
Lou.
mine's not basic.
That thing is absolutely not basic, because your customer range is everywhere.
Yes.
So
yes,
that's a nasty little program there. That's got all kinds of stuff in it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm excited when I pull it, and I've realized though, because it is such a huge undertaking, I'm having to actually do it in stages. And like, okay, getting this one stage down, and I can put that out for testing, and then do the next stage. Then
see, okay, so what you've done is you've actually started to build a system now. It's not a program anymore. Mm. You have a system. You actually have an entire system. You don't build programs, Lou. You build systems. You're a systems designer.
You're not creating
because you've got these little programs, these little baby programs inside of this monster program. Mm. And it's all doing these different tasks, man. And the way you're doing it, you're doing one at a time. You're compartmentalizing all that. That's good stuff.
I just felt like if I try to take it all on, I get that, what's the word we use? The acronym for when your eyes, megalo.
Oh, Mego.
Yeah, because I was looking at this going, okay, this is way too much to bite off. So that's when I kind of step back and I go, okay, what is most important? What do I need to do first? And then what can I add to that? And then what can I add to that?
That's good. That's a good way to think about it, And hopefully, Jeff, that's what we're going to try to do with your. I can't wait to see and help you. I want to help you design that. And you know what? I mean, I kind of want you to have a project that you can use to test yourself and learn on, where you learn these concepts and take it over and work on it. But wouldn't it be kind of cool to sit there and maybe do Jeff's? I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out here, but
that's exactly where I was going, Kurt.
Maybe we could put together Jeff's program, not today, but maybe we can work on it throughout the coming weeks of this thing, and we could actually be building Jeff's program, and maybe we could actually help Jeff through some of the problems. I don't know. I'm just throwing that stuff out there. What do you think, man? What do you think, Jeff?
I'm okay with that. We can throw it out there.
I think it's excellent because, Lou, you're dealing with a CRM system, so it's good that I mean, you might think of questions as we're going through this, and as we blow past all the requirements that Jeff needed for his business, we can start building on to handle the type of scenarios that you might have as well. Okay.
Well, right. And Darren, and as we're walking through this, Lou might see, because she's been working with this, maybe she can say, well, this is a pitfall that I found in that area. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, she's probably already done a bunch of stuff and maybe be able to give us ideas too.
She has.
So for the data types, I need to zoom in here. There we go.
I'm here for the education because I learn something more every single time I hear it.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna do this in Dataverse. Okay, Dataverse should be your first thing that you reach for when thinking of data for the Power Platform. Okay. Now, if you don't have the licensing, okay, you got SharePoint. You know.
Hey Jeff, did you ever get? I'm sorry, Darren. Jeff, did you ever get into your system yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, we're gonna have to help you get through it, get in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can tackle that today, guys. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so we got customers. So we know that Dataverse creates a column, the same name as the table. That's going to be a GUID. That's the primary key. It also tries to create name for us. We're going to add that in there to all of our tables. Okay. Of course, we're going to have.
Okay, Darren, you might need to slow that down a little bit. Okay, because you just okay. So when you create a table in the Dataverse, what's it going to do now? It's going to create. What's it going to create?
So it's going to create a lot of columns for you. And by the way, guys, for Accelerator students, we have 2 lessons where we go through all the basics of the Dataverse. And so you're right, Kurt. It will create a lot of columns for us, but it will create a primary key column that has the exact same name as the table name. Okay. So for custom.
And why is that important? That primary key. Why is that important?
So we can set up our database normalization. So we have a unique identifier that we can look up a specific record. It's completely unique. So if you start looking up people based on their name, well, there could be 2 John Smiths, there could be 2 John Does, right? But if they have a GUID, a globally unique identifier that automatically creates for you, so you know that only one record is going to come back when you search for that. It's very, very important. I think.
Yep.
Yeah. And then also when you create a database table with Dataverse, it's always, you know how SharePoint always tries to create that little title field. I let it do what it wants to. I do the same thing with Dataverse. So I'm going to bring on Mary. She's got a question here. How is GUID different than primary key, or are they the same?
They are the same.
Yeah.
Sorry, Darren. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
and then
did you want to answer that, or?
Yeah. So Mary says things. Okay. So whenever you create a new table in Dataverse, so maybe we can cover this next Saturday, where we actually, so let's design all the tables, and then we could actually go open up Dataverse and create all these tables.
Yeah,
and show all the different data types and all this GUIDs and primary keys and everything. Of course, we got to touch on primary keys because we're creating the data here.
I guess I just want to say that, you know, a GUID is a primary key, but it's so primary. It is such a primary key that is globally unique in the entire world. There's no other existence in the entire world that key is going to be there. So you are guaranteed, not only is it going to be unique to this program, but you would be able to have that ID unique to anything in the world. So that's pretty cool stuff. That's very unique. So it's about as most primary key as you can get, right?
I have a lot of those small tables in there, like the priorities and things like that. But I also had one for images. But I have 2 different categories or 2 different places that I need those images at. And with that GUID, with SharePoint, I had to make 2 different tables. One image for one part and one image for the other. But with Dataverse, I only have to make still one table, and I can actually use it on each individual thing, which worked out great.
Very good.
Right. Because it is truly globally unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Dataverse does really well that SharePoint does not do well. Keep in mind, SharePoint has been around since around 2003, maybe before that, but that's when I got turned on to SharePoint. And started learning about it, but it wasn't designed for Power Apps or Power Platform. Okay. So they had these lookup type of columns. And if you try to use lookup columns in SharePoint, in your Power Apps applications, you'll run into delegation issues. But Dataverse, if you create a lookup column, that is the proper way of creating relationships. And it handles it very well.
Handles it very well.
Yeah, I like it. So, Jeff, tell me about the information that you want to keep track for your customers, for your business. So probably a phone number.
Phone, address, of course, because I have to go to their residents to or the corporation to mow.
Okay, let me ask you a question on the address.
Mhm.
And this is a question for everybody. Okay, so there's different parts of address, right? There's address line 1, maybe address line 2, maybe you need a gate code to get in, maybe you need an apartment number or a suite number, maybe not for lawn mowing, but if you're using the CRM system for people who detail cars or people who cut hair in people's homes, they might want to know that type of stuff. City, state, zip.
Right.
Would we just throw all that into one column, Kurt? Would that be a good deal if I just said address?
Mm-mm.
No,
I think
no, that we should maybe break all that down.
Right. So that address 1 would be, for me, would be maybe a street address. And then I do service different communities. So
Mhm.
having that city, state would be important too, because I'm actually operating in 2 states right now as well.
Wow.
You know, I always looked at that address. I come from the old days when they actually used envelopes and we actually wrote addresses on envelopes, you
Dang,
know.
you're old.
And I yeah, I know, I'm pretty old. And so some of these guys don't even know what an envelope is, right? So I always look at my address like I was going to address the envelope. So like it'd be your name, and then the address 1 would be like your apartment number or the house number, whatever, and then the address 2 would be the street, right? And then that so on down the line. That's kind of the way I looked at it. Like
Like it.
I guess you could break it into suite and apartment number, whatever, but you know.
Yeah. All right. So is there anything else that we should add here, Jeff, for anything that
No, I
missed?
think that looks good for just for the customer information.
Okay. What would you call?
Did you want to?
Go ahead.
Never mind. Go ahead.
What would you call, let's say, a job or a gig? Like, I have an appointment tomorrow. Would you call that an appointment? Would you call that a gig? What would you call that?
Maybe just a service appointment.
Okay, an appointment. All right. So I'm also thinking about if I created a system that would work. You always think in terms of you're spending probably weeks, maybe months building a nice little system for yourself. But
Mhm.
if you take your time and build it in a way that's flexible, think about common denominators, okay? For people who cut hair at people's homes or people who detail cars, okay? So, and if you name things generic like a gig or job, appointment, that type of thing, you're going to create a much better system that you could resell.
Sure.
Okay, and make money that way. So I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart here. What was it that you called it?
I just call it a service appointment, but maybe job would be better.
Okay.
It's a little bit more basic. And then I have a number of different services that I provide, so maybe those would be listed under there, so I could separate.
Good
those
stuff.
out.
That's exactly the kind of thinking I'm looking for right there, Jeff.
This. I love this.
You just found out something that you might. I got more than one job, more than one type.
Right.
So, love it. Now we have a relationship going on here.
Okay, so I'm going to create a column here. Customer lookup, maybe.
Yeah.
Do that. Okay. What do you think of that, Kurt? I'm going to move things around here.
Yeah. Now, see, I love that. I think we were talking about that in the last office hours with Lou. Instead of using, especially when you're working with Dataverse, you got these lookups now. So instead of having like an ID, like a customer ID, we put customer lookup. That tells us we got a lookup column going in there, man, because you can have both, you know. And I wait till you guys see the magic of this lookup. It's pretty cool. Like I said, I'm a control freak when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I give up control to the Dataverse with this lookup because it does such a good job with it. It's great.
So Nick brought up a good point. Notes. So I added notes there. Absolutely. Thank you, Nick. That's exactly what I
was going to say comments, but you know,
comments.
That's what I said. No.
Would you want to, like you were talking about earlier, about being able to have many notes, that you'd maybe want your own table for that, so that
it could be a note ID.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. Absolutely. Okay. So we're
Breaking it
applying
down.
what we just learned here in this session, aren't we, Kurt?
Yep.
Let's delete
Breaking
that
it down,
comment.
making it slicker. We're making this thing slicker.
Okay. Now, question to you, Lou, is what would be an appropriate table name for this? I have something in mind, but I want to see what you would call it.
I call it my notes.
My notes. So-
or notes. And then, but I also have it where who made the note. In that note is who made the note gets registered in there, what the note is. And then, of course, I have my child notes in there. So it gets a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
Could you have categories of notes?
Mhm.
Could you have different types of areas of notes?
Right.
Like it could be a customer complaint. These kind of notes could be customer complaints, because later on you could look and see for those kinds of, you could do like statistics on things like how many customers are complaining. Maybe, you have customer complaints. You have maybe you have ratings, notes for ratings.
If you're setting it up to email your customer a receipt on it, you could have a note that goes and is only visible by the customer that gets sent to that receipt.
Yep. You could have another note that's a reminder, just reminders. Go ahead.
Could you do? Could you have it? She mentioned first she has it called My Notes. So could you have one for My Notes, and then the other one that would be maybe customer feedback, and then all those different customer options underneath that?
So what I would do, let's say if we had a way for customers to use our Power Apps app. So one of the limitations of Power Apps is it was designed to be used within your organization. So what my friend that does auto detailing, what he would do was he wanted people to like give a review or just type in if they're happy, whatever, or maybe even fill out all their contact information. What he had was a tablet. He was signed into his Power Apps account and handed it to him, and they took it in the house and would fill it all out. Well, he started the detailing job.
Sure.
So that particular screen that would allow them to save notes, I would we could either put it all into this table, but we would have maybe a column that would say by the customer or so if you want to filter on this data, you want to have columns that you can put in that second parameter, the filter function, right? And the criteria. So there's all kinds of things we can do. These are great ideas. So I'm keeping an eye on let's see, I've got I'm going to bring in Nick here because he's bringing up some good
Notes can be
information.
a
So
log.
yeah, he said notes. Nick also said review date on notes to follow up. Okay.
So it becomes like a log, so that you can. One of the things I find with small businesses is that they very often don't communicate between the different office staff. They're in and out. So each time you deal with a customer, you can put like a note in there who's done what. And more importantly, put something in there so there's a follow-up task, like ringing on Wednesday next week to arrange whatever. And then you can set that date, and then you can query it each morning for that to pop up and actually get done. It doesn't matter whether you do it or somebody else does it, as long as the company does it. So you sort of expand the notes into a live log. And if it's just an ordinary note, you can set it. Certainly, I found that really useful.
Yeah. Very good. I like this stuff, guys. So Jeff, where did we leave off? You mentioned, okay, we got jobs, we got notes. I feel
that we talked about that there were several different kinds of jobs. I don't know if they would be listed in that one there.
Yeah.
I have a table called services, and these are all the services I do. And then they have their GUID that goes into the
I like
other.
that.
Sure.
I love what you called that. Services.
Now, just to make sure that I've got my mind wrapped around, did we close the idea on the customer, these notes? Did we want to have different a table for all the different kinds of notes that we can keep that might change?
Okay.
That's
so
what
we might have over here note types.
Note types.
You guys are bursting with ideas faster than I can. Okay.
What do you do with your life, Darren? When you do something, he gets on these live streams and makes me just do everything. I hate it.
Okay.
The guy can fly too. He goes fast. He goes wicked fast on a computer, man.
He's mastered the art of copying and pasting very, very well.
I've had to because I can't type worth a darn.
I can't
so.
either.
Go.
I'm the fastest 2-finger typer in the West.
All right, note types. So we could probably put that in the name there, but we also might want to have a description.
Mhm.
Okay. And okay, so we got services.
Well, this is going to be a normalized table for sure.
Yeah.
And I'd do some of the same similar thing with the services that you did with the note types.
Okay. Service types.
So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that we can over normalize? Can you over normalize data?
I'm gonna let you guys answer first, and then I'll give my answer. That might surprise you.
I think you can
What do you
add
guys
a
think
bit
about
actually. If you've got not very much data in a column, it might be not to split it out into a separate table. If you've got 2 or 3 values, just put it in, with a combo box in the application or something,
Yeah.
rather than split out a whole table.
With my services, I put my types and my different things all in one table, but then I've also used the drop downs related so that I can pick things out through my app to where I can filter them for what I want.
I don't think that you can over normalize your data ever. I think it's good to be forward thinking, and maybe you're going to normalize this to a point where some things you might not use very well or very much. However, you never know what you're going to use your program for in the future. If you just talk that, like Darren just gave you a good example about, maybe someday this is going to be used for somebody's cutting hair, or maybe it could even actually be a doctor appointment type thing. I mean, who knows what happens? And that's we're one of the questions that we're trying to answer in this whole thing is what makes a good program and what makes a good programmer. And
listen up, guys. People pay big money for this.
We could talk about this stuff all day long, what makes a good program, but the bottom line is, are people using your program? If people are using your program, then it's a good program. And if they're not using your program, it's not a good program. And so these things...
I've known companies that pay millions of dollars for a system and don't end up using it.
And don't use it. Yep.
Yeah.
So... But the more forward thinking you can be on this, like when we're talking about like, well, maybe we're going to have more than one kind of note in this thing. Someday, somewhere down in the way out there in the world, you might be gone from this world for 100 years, and somebody could be using this program and say, you know what, I would like to do some statistic analysis on the complaints that people have. Well, by golly, we've got this thing over here. We got this type of note over here that can keep track of that, so we can count those things, And now your program's being used, generationally. Who knows, right?
I see there's one big thing we're leaving out of this. This is a business. We need a place for how much are we charging them? How are we tracking that?
Well, sure. Sure. We absolutely got to do that.
Good.
But now that should be the side. Okay, so sometimes you got 2 things. Nick showed a program at the office hours where he had 2 types of functions. He had products over here on one side, and he had, I think it was sites on the other. I can't remember what it was, Nick, you had there. But you actually had 2 different types of development going on at the same time. So you got the customer side over here, and then you're going to have the job side of it, where you're going to have all the different equipment that you're going to be using and the costs of things and how much you're going to be charging. And, so this is going to be quite large.
So guys, I do all this type of stuff and I have a whole playlist out on my YouTube channel. If you go to my playlist tab, go find work order system for a garage or a garage manager app. And it's probably like maybe 10 or a dozen videos, all completely out there where I build out all this type of stuff. I have a whole shopping cart in there. I've got, so as Lou, just based on what you said, okay, I've got a job. What if I have, somebody says, okay, I need to detail, my car, my wife's car, and I'd also like to pay you for next week as well. How is this app going to handle that? Or if somebody's mowing my lawn, it's like, hey, I'd like to be nice to my neighbor. I want you to just go off and mow his lawn today, and so you might actually want to You have different jobs, different types of services that are being purchased all at once. Okay.
One thing
And
in my app is frequencies. How often do they want that done?
Yeah, that's
Right.
another good.
That's
That's
a good one.
another good thing.
I'm
Absolutely.
gonna share a little. This is from my portfolio. I just want to share it with you guys real quick. It is a demo, and this is going to give you ideas, guys. If you're building a CRM system, gee whiz, I need to. I'm going to put the video link after we go live because I don't have the. It's not on my right channel. I've got several channels, and it needs to be on this channel, so I'll provide that as well. Okay, so we got sales. Then we over here we've got a mapping table because it's a many-to-many relationship. Kurt, would you like to give a spiel on relationships? So you got one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. Go.
Absolutely. He says go. So remember the old Jim Carrey movie where he goes like this. He goes. Here we go. So okay, so you've got one-to-one relationships, right? That's when you have one record mapped over to one record in another table. That's called a one-to-one relationship, right? Then you have a one-to-many relationship. Now that would be something like you have customers and you have products. Maybe you're on Amazon. I love to use Amazon because I'm such an Amazon person. I
By the way, guys, Kurt created an app called Kurtazon. You should have him demo it sometime.
So that's how I teach myself. I try to create these labs and I used to do that when I was teaching too. I remember I was teaching the students how to make a word processor. One of our labs was we're going to build a word processor with all the searching and the editing and everything. And we called it Kurt Perfect. Instead of Word Perfect, we call it Kurt Perfect, So instead of Amazon, we had Kurtazon out there. Now it's so funny that Darren, that's how I actually taught myself Power Apps was I created this thing called Kurtazon. Well, if I was going to create Amazon, this is what I would do, And so he gets into my account one day and he takes this picture of me back when I was it looked like something like I was with a mafia or something. It called it Kurtazon, and it had my picture sitting with the Amazon logo underneath it. It was so funny. Anyway, so back to the regularly scheduled program here. So so you have products, you have customers, and then you have products. So one customer like Kurt can go out there and buy a whole lot of products out there in one order, right? So we're gonna create this order, and we have this order out here, and it's going to have a whole lot of products in it. So this one order is going to have many products in it. So we have this customer who creates an order. We have a one-to-one relationship, customer to the order, that has many products. So that's a one-to-many relationship, right? So now, then you have the many-to-many relationship is where you have, like, let's say Kurt has an account. I'm a customer on Amazon, but I've also have an account that is my business that is also a customer to Amazon. So now but Kurt is in both of those. Kurt is in his own personal thing, and he's got his other one. Not to mention, maybe Kurt has a wife or some kids or some friends who also are on that account that can go to Amazon, right? So now we have many to many relationships going on here. We have many customers dealing with many accounts. And so if we just break it down to say Kurt is he's a customer, but he's got many accounts, but then Kurt's account can have many customers underneath of it too. So now it's a many to many relationship. Now what that means then is we have to have this thing called a mapping table that's going to do all that. And I'm not going to try to describe that to you guys without some serious visuals. We're going to do that later down the road. But that many to many relationship is the hardest relationship that you have to do when you're dealing with business applications that I know of. Okay. You might have many to many relationships that have many to many relationships in them. You can build these things way out if you need to, but really
the most common thing you're going to deal with is accounts that can have many customers and customers that can have many accounts. That type of thing right there. That's the many to many that you're working with. And we're going to deal with that later down the road. Most of the time, you're going to be dealing with one-to-many relationships, like what he's dealing with here. Almost everything he's got here, and that's just a simple lookup, where you have one customer dealing with many notes, dealing with many jobs, dealing with many sales. So that's the one-to-many that you're going to deal with most of the time. Now, I know that I just made that more complicated than I needed to, didn't I?
No, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. It gave me a moment to sort of think through this. So,
Well, Jeff, are you lost?
No,
Are you lost?
I appreciate that because that is true. So, for instance, I may have one customer, but when we talk about the services, so maybe one time they just want their lawn mowed, but then another time they want aeration or bushes trimmed or some other service that I offer, and then there's another, there's a bunch of layers to that. I guess that'd be one customer, so that'd be the one to many.
Yep, that's exactly. You got it down.
Right.
You've got it down,
Right.
Jeff. You'll make a database pro out of you yet, man.
Hey, Darren, I was going to say, just for us, of course, I know this, but just for people that don't know, looking at this while you're doing it, realizing that you don't put any spaces between your words, and maybe tell people why you don't.
yeah. So,
That's good.
typically in traditional database systems, you do not put spaces in there. Dataverse is a little bit different because you have these things called display names. And sometimes people think that the display name is actually the database name. But over in Power Apps, it sort of does become the database name. So it's okay to include spaces in Dataverse, because if you're creating model-driven applications, your app's going to look really weird. It's boilerplate, no code. It's a no-code thing. So you drag over, let's say, your customer notes, and it's just going to say customer notes with no space. And then so it makes sense for Dataverse, if you're going to do model-driven types of development, to include the spaces. But traditional database development, you don't put spaces in field names, table names. Any type of database object that you create probably should not have any space in there, just as a general rule for database type of stuff. So trying to make sure I'm up to date on all the fields here.
Frequency.
Hey,
Go ahead.
okay.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Okay, so Paul, you had a comment out there with Paul.
Yeah, so
What was
Paul says, for notes, you could use dates and then use Power Automate flows for a note has not been responded to. Yeah, that's a good point. Do I have do I have follow-up date? Okay, very good. Yeah, so that's an option. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with Power Automate. And then also I see Patty on here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Patty's got a question over here in the private chat.
Yeah. So I'm going to move that over so everybody can see that. SharePoint is the backend for all my Power Apps. Should I be using multiple lists instead of a single list? Yes, you should.
Absolutely. Just the same way we've got it wrote down here, break it down in your SharePoint.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Instead of using lookup columns, I have a video. If you do a search for Darren Neese on YouTube and search for relationships, I've got like 2 or 3 videos on it. Pick the one that's like 7 or 10 minutes long, and I pretty much show you how to set it up in SharePoint. Don't use a lookup column because you'll have delegation issues there. So.
Yeah, everything that we're talking about here, it does, like we said before. You might be dealing with SQL Server, you might be dealing with Oracle, you might be dealing with SharePoint, but it's all the same. It's the principles are going to be the same everywhere you go, no matter what platform you're using.
One thing I think we might have left out of here, Darren, was we talked about the frequencies, because I look at him like he was just saying that one time he might, irrigation, like things like that. Well, like in mine, weekly we do a specific service, but once a month we do a scrub service, or every other week we do a drain service. And so that kind of comes in, and on the frequency side, it really helps having that in there.
So where I
Yep.
would put that over here in job sales, because let's say if it's a really simple order, somebody comes out and they're going to mow my grass, or I'm going to mow someone's grass here. So there's going to be a customer, and then you think, okay, it's just a job. No, because a sale is created. Okay. And then you can have one line item, mow grass. Okay. That is okay. And then, we might say, oh, make this like reoccurring, or probably for the sale, I could say, okay, for today, I want you to mow my grass and my neighbor's grass, but I want you to come back every week and mow my grass. So that would be a line item in a sale. And I would see job sales, and I would say occurring. Now, in the application that I built, the CRM app that I built for the auto detailer, he called it Stay Fresh. So if they checked off on a Stay Fresh, that means once a month they would come back and do maintenance type of stuff. Okay, so I would say reoccurring, and that could be a true, false, yes, no type of a thing. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the true false would be good, but also maybe you need to have like a date range, because some people might want you to come at certain times. Like they might say, I want this done every 3 weeks. I want this done every 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Or every 1 week.
Right.
Okay.
So, and I have some customers that are weekly. I have one customer that wants about every 10 days. So yeah, it would be helpful to be able to.
Also, you might have a task thing, a task table within jobs too, because like Michelle, she's dealing with a like a ticketing type system for HVAC, I believe it was. And so what they have to do is they have to go out there and glow. This is just a thing they do with all their customers. They have to, a certain time of year, they have to hit this thing. Another time of year, they have to go do another thing. They might, so you got different tasks that you have to do within a job that you might have to worry about, that you got to tick off, and some jobs may not have the same tasks that other jobs have, right? So you could get this complicated out with tasks.
I like this. This is good stuff. So guys, as your requirements become more and more complex, the more your database schema changes. You guys see how important it is to nail down the data before you even get into Power Apps and start creating the app.
You realize this group of people right here talking today would have been a boardroom. So many corporate boardrooms this would have been gold for them. They wish they could get what we're doing right here, right now. We're actually just sitting down and talking about this. Most of the time they're sitting in these meetings. They're going, yeah, we'd like to have this and this and this and this. But to sit here and actually just break it down. You see where we all started off, right? We started off with customers, and then we just boom, 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 boom. This thing's just blowing out, right? This is good work, guys. This is exactly what development's about.
If it were me, I'd want to do pictures so you can do before and afters for your advertising and use them for later.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's great.
That would apply to anything.
idea.
Grass,
What a great
haircut,
idea.
auto detailing. Yeah. Could we make that a part of notes and actually have an associated image with a note if they wanted to include it?
Sure. I also do mold removal on the siding of houses. Before and after on that is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sure, that would be great, because that way if a customer ever said, you didn't do my work, you can say, well, this is what it looked like when I started, this is when it finished. So what are you complaining about?
Right.
I'm going to put a task before y'all later, because the way on my app, I want it to be before and after, but I want the before and after to be next to each other. So I was thinking of it similar to a gallery like the child note, to where I have the before on my original, and then the child note would be the after, to where they would, when you scroll, it would always scroll together.
I like that.
Yeah,
What do you think, Kurt?
I'd throw them into one collection. I'd put them into a collection and just present that gallery in a collection is what I do.
I just got to figure out I'm going to be picking y'all's brain on how to make that work to where they're together side by side.
I'll do
Okay.
it loud.
Cool.
I'll do it loud.
Sounds like a fun little session. So
We'll do it
add
loud.
Alex, says, is patch function 100% reliable for Power Apps? That's what I use for updating data almost all the time. I don't use forums. So I would say yes. Now, if there's something specific you're talking about, Alex, please, if there's some caveat that you have in mind that you're talking about, let me know. But yeah, it's great. And I'm looking, Paul just left.
I'd like to just add that with the patch, you actually have total control of what's going in and out of that thing. So it's a lot more reliable to me than relying on that form when I do a submit. Is it going to do it? Who knows what it's doing? You know, I have got no control over none of that. So I love the patch for that reason.
Absolutely. So I'm just looking at Paul's comment here, or add a table for job status. So I do this in my Garage app. If you look at my playlist, so it manages, it's a CRM system like this. Okay. So just FYI, if you haven't seen that series of videos, it's really good stuff, in my opinion. Of course, I'm a little biased. But it manages the mechanics doing work for a job and their associated sales. And so the status could be like, okay, I've started. Okay, this is still pending. Let's say a mechanic has 3 jobs lined up. Oh, I have my whole day planned. Okay, I've got all kinds of stuff to do today. And then let's say they start rebuilding an engine. You know, that might take a whole week to do, but let's say they could do it all in one day. Well, okay, I've started on it, you know, and they might, after they're done, they might update the status to say customer contacted for delivery. So let's say the guy at the front desk calls the guy like, hey, your car's ready. We need to come in and do a test drive, make sure everything's good and whatever. So you can have all kinds of different statuses. So let me add in a quick thing here. Because these are line items within a sale, I'm going to say job, sale, sales status at is I do that right? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Would you put job statuses?
But if you're putting this in Dataverse automatically plurals it for you.
That's true.
I wonder if Dataverse uses the proper grammar for duplication, like stat I. Would it be? You know.
I wonder if it would know that y'all is singular and all y'all is plural.
I don't know. I might just add an S to it. I don't know.
So I need to add in here. So
Lou mentioned earlier too about rates, and so that would be an important thing as well, because so I do like a friends and family flat rate for certain people, but then other customers I do like $1 a minute rate, and then however long it takes me to do the job. That's how it's rated. So there would be a need to distinguish that as well.
I have that too. We do rates. The more often you do it, the lesser expensive it is, because it doesn't take me as much time to do it.
Right.
Right. So, or maybe it could be so complex that you can't really put a canned rate on things. Maybe you have to have a formula, and maybe some of those pieces of the formula need to be put into a database table.
Now this I need to know.
Because sometimes those formulas are or that, you know, you just can't do it. Like you go out there and say, well, it's going to cost me to clean a car. Well, it's $25 for a total washing. But you know what? It just depends on how much chemical you got to use, how much, you know, time it's going to take, and those formulas might have to be part of that rate, you know. And so what you might have to advertise is it cost me this much to do, like for the parts, and it cost me this much for the labor, you know. So
we need to do a module on this one, because like I have our Sanies are based off fixture count, $5 a fixture, but then my scrubs are based off, depending on when they do it, whether it be monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly, either that Sani times 3 or that Sani times 4 or that Sani times 5.
And you know what, Nick, I was just thinking about you too, Nick. He just mentioned it in his text down here. It says slider in the app to flex the time on job. Well, as I was talking, I was thinking about Nick and his slider because he had some sliders going on in one of those programs that he was using, and that is a good way of doing that. But you're still going to have a rate in there somewhere, right? So maybe that's what you store your rates in. I don't know. It's good stuff though. What you got going on over here, Darren? What are you doing?
So if you guys either in the accelerator system or somebody that's just viewing this particular video, if you want to deep dive into all this stuff, you should really check out everything that I did here to create a whole try to, there we go, so we can see everything. So if you look at this, we got the pickup date, we have subtotal, we included sales tax, total, and we could go in here and change the cost. It has default cost. It's got all that cool stuff in there. And if you see on the side here, all the different database tables are created. Okay. And so it's a good series to go through. If you're loving this content that we're covering today, you owe it to yourself to go through this series of videos because I go through all that. Just thought I'd share that. So I'm still trying to keep up with all the comments and everything going on here. Let's see.
This is amazing stuff that we're doing here, guys.
Yeah.
This is really, really good work right here.
Yeah. So
what's so great is that this is so organic that we don't plan this to go down this road. We had no idea we were going to go down this road like this today. We just said, well, we're just going to start with this simple little outline and get things started. And look at us now. We got this big system that we're working with here. It's pretty neat.
yeah, there's something to be said for really structured, pre-recorded, but there's something to be said for the live sessions where you get like an element that you don't know. That's why I like doing all kinds of different formats that we do, Kurt, and having you guys on. And so the midweek accelerator group call, it just sort of like open like office hours. We might have a topic or we might just go over all the projects people are doing. It's more sort of free form. This is okay. We got a topic in mind. And then there are specific topics that Kurt and we need to sort of go down and maybe create more of a formal structure. That's what I love about, what we're doing with all this,
It's actually going to help us to build that formal structure because then we can see the holes, see where people are having the hardest times at. And, but it reminds me of the old days when I was teaching in the college where I would have this formal outline that I was going down in this presentation. And then after a while, we'd go take a break, go outside, and then we would talk about the real stuff. And that's what we're doing right now. It's like we're on break out there at the college and we're talking about the real stuff here now. This is what we really do. This is like the stuff they don't let me teach, but this is what we're really teaching here.
Yeah. I do have a favor to ask of you guys.
If you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated.
All right, so format is open, guys. Do you guys have any questions? There's anything that we should add? What are your main takeaways from what we've covered today? What do you guys think?
You said you would put those images in with the notes. Oh, I see it now. Never
I've
mind.
got it there. But also, if you look at the line item for a sale, I've got a before image and an after image. You could do that. Yeah.
Jeff, I'm real concerned. I just want to make sure, like, what kind of questions do you have? Like what is beyond you so far with what we've talked about today?
Right. So, as we've built this, I understand it's making a lot more sense now because I'm seeing the relationships and why they're connected. Previously when we were looking at it earlier, I guess I just wasn't quite understanding how it was connected and how it worked.
So the visuals to helped you answer a lot of the questions and stuff. Now, what's going to be really cool, Jeff, is that soon, like maybe next week or maybe the week after that on this Saturday morning, we're going to take these tables and we're going to actually build them into the Dataverse. And you're going to literally see the physical thing sitting out there on the Dataverse that we're going to hook the application up to,
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's when things will really start becoming solid for you. I think.
Yeah.
When you actually, you'll see the part actually being made, all the pieces to it, and then we're going to go over to the Power App and we're going to build hooks into those things, and then you'll be able to see it come alive.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, I can't wait. What a great idea to build this thing out over our Saturday morning things. I think that's going to be a great teaching aid.
We might incorporate this, Jack, and put it in our planner.
In the planner?
To where we can actually see our planner and we can see it grow and keep
Oh,
going.
right.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
I like it.
absolutely.
Jeff, I was going to just a tidbit of what I learned on this, because I'm a learn, practice, do. So the Draw SQL, I know that it's on a lot of Darren's things that has the link on how to get to it. They have a free starter thing for it, which is at no cost until you get like over 15 tables, and then you can make the decision if you want to, use it more.
Oh, okay.
Just to give you, so if you want to go practice it on there, it's at no cost to go in there and play around and make some tables
Nice.
and things.
Appreciate that.
And I want to
Yeah, we're gonna have to try to figure out what the holdup is on getting you in, so you get into your system a little bit too.
Yeah, we'll
That'll
get that
help you a
squared
lot,
away
too.
today for you. Absolutely. So I brought everybody, all the panelists are in, guys. So how you doing, Mary? I've heard Mary's voice. Maybe she doesn't want to, and if you don't want to, that's fine.
She's like,
I just want to open up.
like it's too early.
Patty, how you doing? Nick, we've heard from you some. What about Chris? You guys are welcome. And also, if you don't feel comfortable saying anything right now, we could end the live stream here in a few minutes, and I'll be available to you guys a few minutes after if you had something that's maybe not appropriate for the whole world to see or on a live stream. Okay, so.
Mary, if you put your mouse on the screen at the very bottom, there's 3 little things that says mic.
Oh, there we
video
go. Can
or
you hear me?
setting.
Oh, there she is.
I had it full screen,
There's
so I
Mary.
couldn't see those toolbars. Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited about this. I've also, Darren, been following your ticketing system series, which is really long but really in depth. So it goes through, setting up these SQL relationship tables.
Yeah.
And I've got a new Power Apps project, so I am going to be following you step by step. The client, unfortunately, doesn't look like they have Dataverse. They just have the standard M365 business license. So I think I'm going to be building things in SharePoint lists again, which I'm kind of bummed about because I really wanted to try Dataverse. But drawing these relationships is going to be really important for me. It's a oil company that does like this title document review process. So I'll need to definitely build out like lots of different tables to get all of the data correct.
So Mary, what I'd like to challenge you to do is looking at this ERD that we're developing right now and the discussions that we're having in this week and in the upcoming weeks is try to apply it to how that app that you just finished, how you could have designed that a little bit differently using these concepts. Of course, now understand you didn't know these concepts. You had no idea about these concepts back then, and you actually did a lot without knowing these concepts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did a pretty is it a horizontal SharePoint list, and I definitely should have broken that out more.
Your programming time and the hardness of it, the difficulty of it would have probably been a lot easier if you had done this. But yeah, so and you never know, there might be a version 2 of that program coming out soon.
Yep. Yep. One day.
Very cool. So, guys, what else would you like to discuss? We're all yours.
It looks like I'm going to be redoing some apps that were done like when I first started using this method and using multiple SharePoint lists instead of one massive list that is wreaking havoc with some of the apps.
it's going to be so much better. The organization you're going to have is going to be so much, and it's probably going to run a lot smoother too. You know,
I'm hoping, because one of them is a credit card request app, and we constantly have problems with mobile devices. So I need to find a way that they cannot see or reverse it to the beginning of the app away from the page that or the screen that they're supposed to be on. And we're having problems with that fairly regularly, and I don't know what's causing it. And we have a consultant we work with, and he hasn't been able to figure it out either. So maybe we can figure out, with y'all's help, I can figure that out and fix it.
I kind of feel challenged there, Darren. I kind of feel challenged a little bit. I kind of want to check into that a little bit.
I think you thrive on challenge, Kurt. I like
I think I kind of want to check that out.
I'll have to show it to you and show you how it works, because it's a head scratcher for sure.
Very good. Very good. And if we can't solve it, we got Nick.
That's
we
true.
got Nick. He'll figure it out.
Absolutely.
Where's Nick? Oh yeah, he's there still. Okay.
Now I'm keeping quiet. I don't want you to rope me in for something I can't do.
No, you got great wisdom there, Nick. You've been doing this a bit. I like it.
I'm still learning the knocking my head up against the wall between the SharePoint and moving to Dataverse. There's some complications there.
Yeah.
Hopefully this next Wednesday we can maybe attack my one bug thing that I've got going on that I can't seem
I've had
to
the
remedy
reverse.
it. I put it on school.
Sorry, I've had the reverse of that really, Lou. Having come from using, databases, when I started using Power Apps and using SharePoint, which was all that was available, I found that you think, lookups, they're fine. Of course, you run into all the lookup problems, and then all the complex data types don't seem to work really well. So I sort of denormalized the databases down to simple text fields and date fields and things like that, and then rebuilt those tables in SharePoint to use with the Power App. And that actually, that worked, but you had to denormalize the data to make it work. Now I'm sort of trying to do the best of both worlds. I'm looking at the Dataverse stuff and think, yeah, this is really good. This is going to be great. But the reality is that, a lot of people just not going to buy Dataverse. So unless you're going to use the cut down version in Teams, you're going to have to be able to do it in SharePoint as well. And I think that's the big challenge, is to get your head around both different types at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that something you would sort of, see where I'm coming from, Darren?
Absolutely. So Kurt touched on this before. Kurt, you asked the question, is there any reason why you wouldn't completely normalize? I would say 95% of the time, maybe 100% of the time at the beginning. Make sure everything is, fifth normal form, or at least third normal form. There are at least two different reasons where over the years I have a little Kurt on my shoulder. Says, Darren, are you proud of that? Are you proud of that design? Are you proud of that code you wrote? That I say that I sort of reassure myself. It's like, okay, I need to denormalize it for this reason. And the reason is this: whenever you need to create a report, sometimes where you have to create all these, now you can't do joins in Power Apps. There's certain things that you got to do to
report table. That's
so
thing.
If you're creating a data warehouse, which is a different type of, there's two different types of relational database systems that you can create. One is a online transaction processing type of database. That's the one that both me and Kurt are probably do most of our applications with. If you want real up-to-date information, if something changed the data, you can reach out there and read the record and see that change. Then you might have a completely different type of database system, relational database system, called a data warehouse. Okay. Maybe you've got a process once a night that takes all this data, all the sales data, all the customer data, and creates a really denormalized result set or result sets that could be easily queried, that might speed up report a query for a report. That if you kept it all in the online transaction processing type of system, maybe the system that we're building, it might take that query maybe a few minutes to generate, maybe a few hours. Okay. So you might want to have a data warehouse that's got all the data that's maybe refreshed once an hour, once a day, that has good stuff that will pull up a report within seconds or milliseconds. Okay. So you might want to denormalize data for report purposes. Okay. Also, to get around the limitations of Power Apps. Okay. So sometimes I denormalize stuff. And if we're dealing with SharePoint, there's some things that I do that's not really good database design on the normalization side, but it makes my Power Apps application more efficient, that type of reason. So that's, I would completely agree with both Nick and Kurt. You want to keep things as normalized as possible, but if you're going to denormalize your data, have a good reason to do it.
Right. Now, to add to what you're saying with that, when you're denormalizing in those cases, like what I hear is data shaping. It's called data shaping, where you're shaping your data to go to a certain, you're trying to fit it into a certain report. Like, you got all this different information from all these different tables. You just saw all those tables, but you want to build this one report. So you would put it into maybe another database table called a report table that is completely not normalized at all. It's just whatever you want it to show, the rows and the columns, the way it's going to look, and it'll look very unnormalized. And you'll have a lot of repeat data in there. And that's okay. Also, the chart control, a lot of the chart work that I'm doing that we're going to be working with in the labs, we're going to be talking about how to move that into different types of tables just to go into the chart so that you can fit the data in there so that the chart can take it. You've got to denormalize in those kinds of cases. Sometimes the front end of what we're working with is not going to be able to handle all those tables out there. It doesn't understand it. It can only see one table. So you have to bring all those tables into one table and then give it to the object, So that's good stuff.
Paul brought up a really good point, which is sometimes if your app is really simple, sometimes you can almost go overboard with relationships that might, I don't know, like there's such thing as over engineering an app. If it's a simple app that only one or two people are going to be using, and it's only going to have 100 records. Do you need to spend all day creating a 20 database table application, or maybe keep things a little more simple? Of course, that type of stuff will come up in the requirements. But something that Kurt's taught me is that even the simplest app, it's a good app, and you're a good developer, more and more people are going to start using it, and your requirements are going to grow. And then you're going to be like, oh, I need to rewrite this thing. Oh, I need to rewrite this thing. So that's a sort of lesson learned. So a lot of times I come back to what Kurt has said. That has been all the advice that Kurt's given me over the years, guys. That's why I'm so excited about him being my partner on here, is that he's given me so much advice over the years. It's become timeless. I don't care if I'm doing Power Apps, if I'm doing C#, Java, whatever. I always have a Kurt on my shoulder, like, oh, Darren, remember what I told you back in 2001,
It's all about the fundamentals. Really, it is. And I've seen so many times that people will come in there and try to, well, you don't really need to do this. You can really just use implicit referencing versus explicit referencing. It doesn't matter. And it's like, well, no. And over time, it always ends up going back to the fundamental. It might veer off for a little while, and you might hear a whole lot of stuff about you're just not cool if you don't program this way. But it always reverts back to the fundamental in the end, doesn't it?
It does. Absolutely. So Elbaz asks, should I create a separate SharePoint site for each Power App if you're using SharePoint as a data source? That's exactly what I do. And I don't try to use some SharePoint site that the whole department or organization is used to seeing. And I don't want them going in there and going to site contents and seeing all the data, modifying something. No, I almost want it to be like a little secret SharePoint site that I'm using for one app. So I like to keep all my, think of if you're going to use SharePoint list as a database. Sometimes people cringe, especially in IT. It's like SharePoint is not a database. Well, if you don't have the premium licensing, it is. It's a valid data source, much better than Excel. And
are people using it? Yes, they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, that's what I recommend. Yeah. Creating a separate site for each one, and don't let, they might get an email when you start adding them to the, to the site and everything, but try to keep it as secret as possible. And there's things you can do to
Darren, this is good stuff. This is such good stuff, Darren. You need to do a module on this, on the SharePoint, on the ins and outs of SharePoint, the how to use it, when to use it, where to use it, why to use it. I mean, really, I think this could be a big deal.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. So ChatGPT provides pretty decent starting point while defining entities and fields for, absolutely it does. Absolutely. So you could use ChatGPT and tell it, hey, I'm building a simple CRM system for mowing people's grass. Like, give me ideas for all the database tables, the primary keys, the foreign keys. Make sure this meets 7th normal form and see what it generates. I don't know. I'm just blown away what ChatGPT gives me.
So let's do this as an exercise then. Once we get this ERD done, before we go in there and we create the structures, let's have a session here on a Saturday morning where we see how well ChatGPT can replicate what we did. Let's see the difference between what we did versus the machine, man versus machine here, and let's see who comes up with the better ERD. Huh?
I like it, Kurt.
Let's do it, Picasso.
So, if you want to see an example of that, look at that. Well, let me make my screen a little bigger here. Do a search for Darren East ChatGPT, and here we go. Can ChatGPT create a whole Power Apps application? It gave me the idea for it and everything. It's great. Nick says I'm going to be learning this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and you know what? That's what I love. I guess I wanted to say that earlier too. The people that are in here, I see many of these people in here are like students of the language. They're students. They just want to learn. They just want to keep on learning. It's like I've been doing this for 100 years now, and I'm still learning. I just love it. I just have so much fun learning. I get excited about it.
Like it. All right.
For some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video.